Advances in equipment and training techniques have come a long way since the beginning of scuba diving as we know it. So far, in fact, that almost anyone who is comfortable in the water can enjoy the spectacular underwater world. Though this doesn't relieve divers of certain responsibilities. The water is an unfamiliar, new environment with demands all its own. Only divers who are reasonably fit and in complete control of their mental and physical capabilities can be counted as responsible divers. Divers should be well rested and feel good before diving. Never dive when you're sick, including seasick. Obviously, alcohol or other drugs impair judgment and reaction times, which are critical for safety underwater. Remember, never drink and dive. If you're unsure of your physical condition, get a medical checkup before diving. When scuba diving, divers are not only experiencing a new set of sensations, they are also subjecting themselves to physical laws that can affect the human body. The most important of these deals with the increased pressure of the underwater environment. This pressure is measured in pounds exerted per square inch of space, or psi. The metric equivalent to psi is bar. Now, it's obvious to most of us that water has weight. In fact, a cubic foot of seawater weighs about 64 pounds, or 29 kilos. What is less obvious is that air also has weight. A column of air 1 inch by 1 inch stretching from sea level to the top of the atmosphere weighs 14.7 pounds, or 1 bar. Therefore, at sea level, we are under 14.7 psi, or 1 bar of pressure. This amount of pressure is referred to as 1 atmosphere of pressure. In metric, 1 atmosphere is equal to 1 bar of pressure. Water is far denser than air, and therefore far heavier. It takes only 33 feet, or 10 meters of seawater to equal the 14.7 pounds, or 1 atmosphere of air. When a diver goes to 33 feet, or 10 meters, the surrounding water pressure is added to the atmospheric pressure to create a total of 29.4 psi, or 2 atmospheres, or 2 bar of pressure. As the diver descends, this pressure continues to increase at the rate of 1 atmosphere every 33 feet, or 10 meters. So at 66 feet, or 20 meters, the ambient pressure will be 3 atmospheres, 44.1 psi, or 3 bar. These principles of increasing pressure are explained by a law of physics called Boyle's law. As the pressure continues to increase, the volume of air continues to decrease. In order to equalize this increasing pressure, you must inject air until the volume is equal to the surrounding water pressure. This increasing pressure will affect air spaces in your body and equipment. Within the body, there are air spaces, primarily in the ears, sinuses, and lungs, which hold air. Ear squeeze is caused by increasing water pressure pushing against the eardrum, forcing it inward. By pinching off the nose and gently blowing, air will pass through the eustachian tube into the middle ear. As the water and air pressures are equalized, the eardrum returns to normal. Equalize on the surface before your dive and during the dive before discomfort occurs. If you feel a squeeze, ascend until the discomfort subsides, and try again to equalize. Your sinuses are also subject to squeezes. Usually, when divers equalize pressure in their ears, air will pass into the sinus cavities, equalizing them as well. However, certain illnesses, such as the common cold, will cause nasal membranes to swell, blocking the passage of air. You should simply avoid diving with blocked nasal or ear passages. Increasing pressure will also compress the air inside your mask, causing pressure on your face. To prevent this, exhale air from your nose into the mask so water and air pressure can be equalized. The lungs aren't really affected by increased pressure because the air delivery system is designed to deliver air equal to the surrounding pressure. However, when you fill your lungs at 2 atmospheres using scuba, the lungs fill to the same volume of air as at the surface, but the air is twice as dense. So at 33 feet or 10 meters, you are actually breathing in twice the amount of air as at the surface. This is the reason a diver's air supply is used up faster at depth, and a high-quality regulator is important. A great amount of scuba equipment has been designed to allow you to do this. Breathe. Just breathe. An activity that you do unconsciously day and night. However, underwater, you might very well become conscious of each breath, especially as a new diver. Since it's easier to get used to something you understand, let's take a look at the respiration process and how it's affected underwater. The air you breathe is a mixture of about 80% nitrogen and 20% oxygen. Oxygen is burned by the body to carry on the process of life. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct given off as a result of the body's use of this oxygen. Respiration is the process by which the blood exchanges carbon dioxide for oxygen. In normal respiration, the two gases are kept in constant balance. Imbalances can be caused by stress, fear, or an improperly maintained regulator. Your body reacts by causing you to breathe rapidly. This leads to fatigue and a feeling of breathlessness, which begins a dangerous cycle. This condition is called uncontrolled hyperventilation. By making sure that you're familiar with all your equipment, have a high-quality, well-maintained regulator, and by avoiding conditions for which you are unprepared, you can help avoid stress. Should you feel yourself hyperventilating, stop, think, relax, and breathe normally. Don't be afraid to end a dive should you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Be aware of the signs of stress and hyperventilation, and be prepared to calm your body if these signs appear. Being a responsible citizen means being prepared to help someone in an emergency situation. Being a responsible diver is no different. In order to be prepared, SSI suggests enrolling in a React Right First Aid and CPR course and an SSI Stress and Rescue course. When in the water environment, you are exchanging the sights, sounds, and feelings of one world for those of another. The most pleasant of these sensations is this one: weightlessness. All objects have some degree of buoyancy, but we refer to them as being positively, negatively, or neutrally buoyant because of their weight in comparison to water. Let's see what this means to the diver. The human body is mostly water and is therefore neutrally buoyant. However, this will vary slightly depending on individual body makeup. When you dive, you add several pieces of equipment that affect your buoyancy. An exposure suit, which is made of closed-cell neoprene, is very light relative to water. Therefore, it tends to give you positive buoyancy and will make you float. To offset this buoyancy and make it easy to submerge, you will need to use a weight system as described in Section 1. If the weights are more negative than the wetsuit was positive, you will have negative buoyancy and will sink. If positive and negative buoyancy are offset, you will establish neutral buoyancy. With neutral buoyancy, you will float effortlessly, neither rising nor sinking unless you want to. Being able to establish neutral buoyancy is one of the most important skills in diving and depends on your being properly weighted. With all of your equipment on and the BC deflated, inhale. The water level should come to the midline of your mask. As you exhale, you should start to descend. By far the most important piece of the buoyancy puzzle is the buoyancy compensator, or BC. You'll want to invest in the highest quality BC that fits your budget. Consult with your SSI dealer or instructor. The BC has several uses. When inflated, it keeps the diver on the surface with the head well out of the water. This eliminates the need to tread water. Underwater, the BC becomes our primary comfort device. By either power or orally inflating, the diver can maintain neutral buoyancy, which is a major part of the fun. As you descend, the increasing water pressure causes the air in the BC to contract, decreasing your buoyancy. You must add air to the BC as you descend to maintain neutral buoyancy. The third use of the buoyancy compensator comes in our ascent to the surface. As you ascend, the the air in your BC will expand, giving you an extra lift. You may need to vent off excess air to maintain a slow, easy rate of ascent. By going underwater, we are subjecting our senses to a new set of circumstances. In humans, the most important sense is vision, but our eyes are designed to work in air, not water. When light rays enter the cornea, they are refracted to a focal point in the eye called the retina. This process is what allows us to see clearly. When water touches the eye, light is refracted differently. It now focuses at a point behind the retina, causing blurred vision. Overcoming this problem is relatively simple. The mask traps a pocket of air around the eyes, allowing them to function in an air environment. When light rays enter a diving mask, they have traveled through the water, through the glass of the mask, through the air pocket around the eyes, and finally into the eyes and through the liquid inside. All these elements combine to have a magnifying effect on objects. All objects seem about 25% closer and 33% larger underwater. Water also has an effect on the physics of light and therefore affects how you see color underwater. As you descend, the water absorbs the colors of the spectrum one at a time. Reds and oranges are absorbed within 30 feet or 9 meters. By 60 feet or 18 meters, the yellows and greens are gone, leaving everything with a bluish tinge. To restore color, you must bring a source of artificial light with you. A dive light is an excellent piece of equipment to take on every dive. Sound energy that originates in water travels about 4 times faster than sound in air. By banging on your cylinder with your diver's tool or other solid object, you will create a sound that will travel over long distances. This is the universal signal to get someone's attention. Be sure to respond when you hear this sound. In order to communicate, divers have developed a series of hand signals with universally accepted meanings. By far the most common of these is the OK sign. This can be used both as a question or a response. When your instructor or buddy gives the sign to you, they're asking if you're okay. When you give the signal back, you're saying, yes, I am okay. An extended palm signals others to stop. A thumb pointed up means going up, or pointed down means going down. Pointing to oneself, to others, or to objects means I, you, or it. A hand tipping back and forth means something is wrong, while tapping on the faceplate of your mask means look. By tapping your chest with a closed fist, you're saying, I'm low on air. A slashing motion across the throat means out of air, and pointing at your second stage means let's share air. A hand held with the palm up is a question, either where, what, or how, depending on the context. Cupping the hands or fingers to make a triangle means boat. A wavy motion with the hand means fish. By combining these signals, you can create very intelligible sentences, making it easy to converse with your buddy underwater. As you become more experienced, you can add more signals to your vocabulary. Water conducts heat about 25 times faster than air. This means that your body will be radiating heat into the surrounding water faster than its ability to keep up. To minimize this heat loss and allow for proper absorption and elimination of gases in the respiration cycle, divers use exposure suits as described in the first section. The wetsuit traps a thin layer of water between the skin and the inner layer of the suit. The body quickly heats this water, and the neoprene insulates your body from the colder water outside. Other exposure suits are used depending on diving conditions. Care should be taken to avoid overheating while getting ready for a dive. Wearing a wetsuit in the sun, even for a short time, can cause body temperature to rise. Time your dressing to coincide with your buddy's. Should you start to overheat, stand in the shade, open the suit, or enter the water. Maybe, someday soon, you'd like to learn more. In the Dive Control Specialist course, you'll learn more about how water affects light, sound, and heat so you can maximize your enjoyment. We've seen what happens when we descend and breathe air at depth. Let's look at how Boyle's law affects the diver when he ascends and is subjected to decreasing pressure. As you ascend, the pressure decreases and the air in the lungs will expand. If unvented, the lungs filled at 2 atmospheres would have to expand to twice their volume before the diver surfaces. Therefore, 1 volume of air must be vented off through normal respiration. If it's not, then overexpansion and damage to the small sacs or alveoli of the lung may occur. Breathe all the time, and never hold your breath underwater while scuba diving. If overexpansion should occur, air escaping from the lungs can enter the bloodstream. The blood will then carry the bubbles of air through ever smaller arteries and capillaries, and eventually become lodged, blocking the flow of blood. This is called an air embolism. The worst place for an embolism to occur is in the brain. When the blood and oxygen supply to the brain is cut off, vital tissues begin to die. This is an immediate life-threatening situation. Symptoms of a brain embolism include dizziness and disorientation, with eventual unconsciousness. Although an air embolism is the most dangerous, a variety of other overexpansion problems can also occur. These include mediastinal emphysema, subcutaneous emphysema, and pneumothorax. The victim must immediately be transported to the nearest emergency medical facility. The treatment of lung expansion injuries may involve immediate recompression in a hyperbaric chamber. This will reduce the size of the bubble, allowing it to pass through the capillary, unblocking the flow of blood. While lung expansion accidents are quite serious, their prevention is quite simple. Simply breathe at all times while underwater. Under normal sea level pressures, nitrogen has little effect on the respiration process. It is not used by the body, nor does it cause any harm. As you descend, however, the total quantity of nitrogen molecules taken in goes up dramatically. Twice as much at 2 atmospheres, 3 times as much at 3 atmospheres, and so on. For reasons we do not fully understand, past a certain concentration, this nitrogen becomes narcotic. This leads to a condition known as nitrogen narcosis, or being narked. Symptoms of narcosis usually begin to show between 80 and 100 feet, or 24 to 30 meters, although both depths and symptoms may vary from diver to diver. A sense of euphoria and general well-being are common. As the diver descends deeper, there may be an inability to think clearly, or there may be a fixation on objects or ideas. As the effects of narcosis increase, most divers become dizzy and unable to perform simple motor or mental skills. They become a safety hazard to themselves and those around them. The cause of nitrogen narcosis may be obscure, but the cure is simple. Just ascend to a depth above that where the symptoms first appeared. The effects will dissipate almost instantaneously, with no after effects. Prevention is even simpler. It is not recommended that you exceed the 100-foot or 30-meter recreational diving depth without specialized deep diving training. There is another effect of nitrogen that is potentially more hazardous. This condition is called decompression sickness, or more famously, the bends. As you've learned, the blood picks up oxygen during respiration. The oxygen is used for fuel in exchange for carbon dioxide, which is created as a byproduct of burning the oxygen. Nitrogen is an inert gas and is not used by the body. As pressure increases, however, the diver comes under an effect of physics called Henry's law. Under pressure, gases can be forced into liquids in amounts equal to the ambient pressure. In other words, under 2 atmospheres of pressure, twice as much gas can be dissolved into a liquid as at sea level. At 3 atmospheres, 3 times as much. For the diver, this means that nitrogen is dissolved into the tissues of the body at a rate that increases with depth. This process requires time. As long as the nitrogen remains dissolved, it continues to have no effect on the body. But let's see what happens when the pressure is suddenly decreased. As the diver ascends, pressure continually decreases. As pressure decreases, the nitrogen that was dissolved in the tissues can no longer be held in solution. As such, it begins to come out of solution at a rate that is consistent with the amount of time a diver spent at a specific depth. As long as this nitrogen is allowed to come out of solution slowly, it is vented off through normal respiration and poses no threat to the diver. There can be a problem, however, when ambient pressure is reduced too fast. When this occurs, the dissolved nitrogen comes out of solution too quickly for normal respiration to vent off. Nitrogen that is released too quickly can form small bubbles in the tissues and blood. Depending on where these bubbles form, they can cause a variety of problems. Bubbles forming around the joints will cause local pain at the affected area due to the partial blockage of blood. If they're formed under the skin, itching and a rash are likely. More severe types of decompression sickness occur when the bubbles form around the spinal cord, in which case paralysis and loss of feeling may result. The bubbles can also be carried by the bloodstream and be lodged in the smaller capillaries of the brain. Dizziness, convulsions, and unconsciousness are common symptoms. Unlike air embolism, which usually completely blocks the blood flow with relatively large air bubbles, the nitrogen bubbles of the bends are tiny, creating a partial blockage. Except in the most severe cases, symptoms develop over time, from a few hours to a few days. Treatment for decompression sickness is recompression in a hyperbaric chamber, which will force the nitrogen bubbles back into solution. Pressure is then slowly relieved, so that the excess nitrogen can be vented off in normal respiration. For purposes of treatment, any diving accident, including lung expansion injuries, should be treated as decompression illness. First aid should be administered immediately. 1. Manage the ABCs of life support. 2. Provide 100% oxygen. 3. Contact the local emergency medical system and, if necessary, 4. Contact the diving medical professionals in your region. If any type of decompression illness is suspected, the victim should be transported to the nearest emergency medical facility immediately. Keep the phone numbers for your local emergency medical services in your SSI dive log. Learn more about accident management in the SSI Stress and Rescue course and React Right first aid training programs. While the consequences of the bends are not good, they can be minimized or prevented by monitoring your depth, time, and ascent rate. As we've said, the absorption of nitrogen is predictable, depending on how deep and for how long a diver has been down. Dive computers and your SSI dive tables are designed to calculate no decompression scuba dives. Dive computers calculate no decompression data automatically, while your SSI dive tables must be used manually to calculate no decompression data. We'll discuss how computers and the dive tables work in the next section. Begin your ascent while neutrally buoyant. Proper ascent procedures can help eliminate lung expansion accidents. As you ascend, face your body and look toward the surface to help keep your airway open. The expanding air from your BC must be vented to prevent an uncontrolled ascent, so keep the inflator mechanism in the extended left hand. Your ascent rate should not be faster than 30 feet or 9 meters per minute, so monitor your timing device and depth gauge or your dive computer. Another safety procedure includes making a safety stop at 15 feet or 5 meters for 3 to 5 minutes on every dive. This will help eliminate some of the nitrogen you have absorbed at deeper depths. Once at the surface, it's very important to inflate your buoyancy compensator. Leave the mask on and either keep your second stage in place or switch to your snorkel. This will allow you to rest comfortably without water entering your nose or mouth. Strangely, most accidents occur on the surface after the dive. These could be completely avoided with an inflated BC and by knowing how to ditch the weight system if necessary. With proper monitoring of the instruments, the possibility of running out of air is unlikely. There are basically 4 options available should the diver run out of air. The one that is used depends on the situation. If the diver is far from the surface and a diving buddy is nearby, it may be preferable to do an air-sharing ascent. The person needing air gives the out of air and I want to share air signals. The donor may either give up his primary second stage, then breathe off his alternate air source, or he may give the needer, the person needing air, the alternate, and continue to breathe off the primary. Once the situation has stabilized, the buddy team begins a swimming ascent to the surface, maintaining constant contact. Positive buoyancy can be established to assist the ascent, but the buddies must be sure to ascend at the same rate. When the surface is reached, the BC should be immediately inflated, and the divers should be prepared to ditch their weights if necessary. An emergency swimming ascent is preferred if the surface is near and your buddy is far away. Begin by strongly kicking toward the surface. Stay relaxed and look up to keep your airway open and avoid overexpansion problems. Leave your second stage in your mouth and continue to try and breathe normally. On ascent, air in the scuba system may expand, possibly allowing the second stage to deliver air at shallower depths. Even if no air is taken in, exhale slightly on each try so that expanding air can be vented. Never hold your breath under any circumstances. Once on the surface, inflate your BC with the power inflator or orally if necessary. It does no good to reach the surface only to slide back underwater again. If you have any concerns about being able to stay on the surface, drop the weight system to maintain positive buoyancy. If your dive buddy is some distance away, and it's uncertain that a swimming ascent can be accomplished, it may be best to do an emergency buoyant ascent. Buoyant ascents are accomplished by establishing positive buoyancy by either dropping the weight system, inflating the BC, or both. To drop your belt, begin with your arms at your sides, then slide your hands up until they touch the belt. Move them forward until they reach the buckle. Hold the belt at arm's length away from the body and release. If you're using an integrated weight system with your BC, you must be aware of the proper release method for your particular model. However, the same concept applies. You must be able to identify and locate the release mechanism. Refer to your owner's manual for the proper procedure. Ditching the weight system will establish immediate positive buoyancy. If you need to slow your ascent, let air out of the BC and, if possible, flare the body when about 20 feet or 6 meters from the surface. Since the buoyant ascent is quicker than a normal ascent, the chances for embolism and decompression sickness are increased. Care should be taken to breathe at all times. Never hold your breath. Vent air from the BC and flare the body. There are also independent air systems that can be used in an emergency. These operate separately from the primary air source and provide the diver with enough air to make an ascent without relying on another diver. The size of the cylinder dictates the amount of air available. Diving is a wonderful experience. With just a few precautions, the diver can enter an entirely new world. With the proper knowledge, proper skills, proper equipment, and the proper experience, this unfamiliar world can offer the most positive experiences possible in inner space. Human beings have once again used knowledge as the key to enter this world. With knowledge in how water affects the human body, the diver can safely adapt to the underwater environment.